Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions here with my uncut review of episodes 1 and 2 of Monarch Legacy of Monsters. This one takes place in the Monsterverse, which includes 2014's Godzilla, 2017's Kong Skull Island, 2019's Godzilla King of Monsters, 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong, and the upcoming 2024 Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. The synopsis for Monarch Legacy of Monsters on IMDb reads, set after the battle between Godzilla and the Titans, so after that first 2014 Godzilla movie, revealing that monsters are real, follows one family's journey to uncover its buried secrets and a legacy linking them to Monarch, which is this mysterious organization. The synopsis for episode 1 says Kate travels to Japan to get answers about her father and uncovers a shocking secret. Keiko, Lee, and Billy pursue a theory about Titans. And so we've got kind of like, well, I'm not even sure if Keiko, Lee, Billy, those are the flashback characters from the late 50s and 60s. Episode 2 says Monarch closes in on Kate, Kentaro, and May as they try to track down a key individual, and then in the flashback, Keiko, Lee, and Billy stumble on a major find. So, I would describe this as a suspense action show with that giant monster premise as, I don't want to say just a backdrop. In the present day stuff, present day quote unquote, it's taking place around 2014, maybe some mid 2010s. But the present day stuff, not really monsters there yet. Maybe there won't be, as this is taking place between major events in the Monsterverse, starting with Godzilla, and then 2017 Kong Skull Island is when the next big thing happens, unless this series is going to reveal there was another monster attack, although I don't think canonically that's going to fit in with what the monsters have done. So just knowing that in advance, I'm like, oh, so this series is probably not going to be involving, in present day at least, a giant monster attack again. Maybe in the flashbacks, because the flashbacks are taking place out in the jungle and on islands and stuff. We're already seeing some giant monster type stuff going on, suspense and action sequences in the flashback scenes. That's really where they are at home. So they are still a part of the show, just not the present day stuff. But that shouldn't be taken to indicate that, oh, so there's hardly any of it. Well, no, that's not the case really, because it's almost 50% flashbacks. They really are dividing between present day stuff and the flashback stuff almost evenly. At least that's what it feels like to me. But yeah, the modern day stuff is largely about living in the fallout of G-Day, the Godzilla attack day, in a world with giant monsters, or where giant monsters have been proven to exist. So they've got drills in Tokyo where if there are warning signs, then suddenly everybody, like a hurricane drill or something like that, goes to these exits that are marked with signs with little like kind of pictures of Godzilla and like arrows pointing this way or whatever, So they've got all systems in place. It's like they're treating it like a natural disaster. And that's really what I've liked about this Monsterverse series, where the monsters are... They really function, largely the movies function as disaster movies, but instead of a natural disaster, it's these giant monsters that are warring with each other or migrating or doing other kind of natural things. And so I've always liked that about this take on the Monsterverse. And so living in the fallout of that first huge impact of Godzilla showing up in the 2014 movie, we're seeing that on both a national level with these kinds of procedures, that everyone is used to doing, these drills that everyone's used to running, but also on a very personal family level, because the main characters in the present day are the children of this missing father who was part of Monarch or was wrapped up in some way with the stuff going on with these giant monsters, and he disappeared recently. But the surviving family, well, it's actually families. This guy was living two separate lives, and so a half-brother and half-sister are meeting each other, discovering that each other exist for the very first time in the first episode. And so there's this very personal stuff that they're working through of anger, really, toward their father, realizing, that he was cheating on both of his wives and living this double life. And they're trying to figure out why in the world would he do that? Well, they're also just living in the frustration of that situation as well. So they've got anger toward each other that's really about their dad. So it's got that personal stake that's really important to me in any movies, you know. Let's see. They're also being hunted by this mysterious Monarch organization who wants their father's files, and that's where some of the action suspense type stuff comes from. I think for me, the pacing of the first episode worked, but moving backward chronological steps in the flashbacks is not working for me as well. Because, like, one example would be, because these characters, they have like a romantic status. Two of these three characters that are traveling together. Okay, two of them are in a romantic relationship. One of them is kind of like the fifth wheel, the third wheel, or whatever. And then after that first episode, we are going back and doing a series of flashbacks that takes place, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years before that. And I'm like, well, why are we, this is almost like a flashback of a flashback. What in the world is going on? Why are they doing it in this order? It seemed very strange to me. And it leaves me in this place where I know where the characters are going to be going. I know, oh, these two are going to be in a relationship, but now we're jumped back to 3 to 5 years where they're not in a relationship. And I'm just kind of waiting to see how it plays out for them to get to this relationship. So there's a number of things where, like, I am ahead of the story and the story structure because of the way the flashbacks are ordered, and also because of where this sits in the larger MonsterVerse story. I'm like, I've seen all these monster movies, and these characters have only experienced the events of the first one, and they're still discovering and dealing with the fact that, oh, I guess the world has giant monsters in it, and that's kind of old hat to me. And so waiting for them to discover in deeper ways this existing larger world of monsters, I'm kind of feeling impatient for them to catch up to me. And on top of that, I wanted episode 2's ending to really happen around the midpoint of episode 2. That's kind of like how I felt the pacing was. I wanted them to be revealing things, moving along in major story beats, at a faster clip than they were, especially in episode 2, where I was starting to check out a bit. Now, I do love the concept of focusing on people in the aftermath of G-Day, as they call it. But I also want the present-day revelations for the characters to come more quickly. And I think I would also prefer it's too late for them to do this now, but I prefer like a one-at-a-time storytelling approach to these different arcs. Like, okay, let's say this is going to be an 8-episode show, and it's being divided between stuff happening in the 60s and stuff happening in present day. Well, then let's do 4 episodes of like a mini-series that are all about the 60s, and then jump forward and do 4 episodes capping off this season with present-day stuff. I think that way, in each of those 2 settings, the story, the revelations, the reveals would be getting to where I want them faster. And the way it is now, it's like, yeah, both of these stories are not moving forward in the way that I want them to move forward. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not completely checked out, but I think that would be something that I would prefer. As far as the cast and the performances go, I think it's a pretty solid cast. I don't always buy into every moment, though. They also aren't being asked to do much more than be angry or worried or otherwise stressed. Just a lot of general furrowed brow acting going on, and we don't get many silent moments where performances really themselves are carrying things. So I don't have any complaints about the performances, but there's nothing really memorable yet about them to me either. As far as stunts and visuals, this is like the odd man out when this is a movie franchise. So does it work well visually with the movies? I think it does. The camera and effects work all feel premium quality, even theatrical, though far from the best theatrical effects, but, well, maybe not far from. I shouldn't say far from. Still at the top tier of streaming content, I'll say, as Apple seems to be known for these days. So no complaints, and I think that the quality, from what I remember, fits pretty seamlessly with the visual effects and the filmmaking quality of the movies in this franchise. So I think if someone's like a big fan of these and is collecting all these to have in their library, I think they're going to have a pretty seamless experience as far as quality goes, going from this to the other movies back and forth, All right, themes. Is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance in the themes of this thing that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? I think the main theme that's emerging to me is one of gaining perspective on parents who fall short. Now, more broadly, it could be just gaining perspective on people in your life who have let you down, who have disappointed you in some way. But here, it does seem to be even more focused on specifically the father, the missing father of these characters, and them realizing, crap, he really cheated on both of our moms, on our families. He was living this massive lie. But I think also they're slowly gaining understanding of who he was, what he was up to. And I think that in our lives, I mean, even the best parents, their kids are going to grow up and look back and maybe see some things like, oh, I wish they would have done this differently, you know. And I think that gaining some perspective both on their lives and then on just life in general as we make our own bad choices and realize, oh crap, that wasn't the best choice, you know. I think that gaining that kind of perspective on the circumstances in which our parents made certain choices, it rarely removes, I think, a sense of guilt. And of course, there's such a wide spectrum. I mean, I'm talking about the more garden variety disappointment with parents, not the type of disappointment that's about, like, you know, horrible abuse and things like that, you know. But I think that gaining some perspective can provide some understanding for us, even though it may not leave us in a place where, like, okay, yeah, I have no problem with the choice that they made. But yeah, understanding more of our parents' own upbringing, you know, where they were coming from and what examples they were given growing up, what experiences they had growing up that resulted or influenced their own parenting decisions, having a perspective on their strengths and weaknesses just as people, and their circumstances as well, combined, I think, also with some humble reflection on complexities surrounding our own poor choices or complexities surrounded choices we make that others would consider poor. You know, all of these things together, I think, can help lead us to a willingness to forgive. That doesn't mean to declare guiltless, but to forgive in the sense that I am not going to relationally hold this against them anymore. I'm not in my mind going to harbor anger and a desire for them to get what's coming to them. You know, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about forgiveness. That's really the idea behind forgiveness, is not saying they are guiltless, but letting go of a need for them for me to be a part of making sure they get what's coming to them or what they deserve or, you know, whatever, but letting go of that. So I think that kind of like having a deeper understanding of our parents and their circumstances, gaining some understanding about life ourselves, all of these things can really help to bring about some forgiveness. And that's, I guess, what came to mind when I was watching this. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the arc. I don't know what they're going to discover about their father in this show, but that's certainly what came to mind for me as far as themes. All right, well, I have no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, wait until all the episodes release. They've just released 2 so far. Probably going to do the weekly thing until this season is done. So wait. You don't want to pay more than a month to try this show out. And then even when you do try it, binge it on a peripheral screen, something off to the side while your main attention is being given to like a video game or doing laundry or who knows what else. And in that way, you can track with the story, you can put down what you're doing and give it your full attention when it's really doing some stuff that interests you, and leave open the door for the possibility of it becoming your primary experience, giving it your full attention. I think it could become that for me. It's not quite there yet, but I would like to give it the chance to get to that point. And I think that could happen if they tighten up the pacing and they dish out those story revelations a little more frequently going forward. This one is rated TV-14 for violence and language. And those are all my thoughts for now on Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, episodes 1 and 2. As always, I'd love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Are you a fan of these big kaiju movies and what's going on in the Monsterverse? And what do you think of this one so far? Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected to this content. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/Spirit Productions. Then, as always, I hope you'll check out all the content you can find at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.
I'm not interested.